Hey everyone, I'm the Wrathful Proser, and you're listening to Ink Noire. Today I wanted to talk about how media manipulation can be obviously detrimental to reporting true crime news and how it connects to not just things in the news today, but in connection to the 1954 murder case and trial of the Parker and Hume case. The media portrayal of true crime stories can vary greatly, but it's safe to say that we all understand that a lot of news can be rumors and dramatized assumptions. During the 1954 murder trial of teen killers Pauline Parker and Juliet Hume, this was no different. Every movement was scrutinized and placed under a judgmental microscope. While many people were interested in learning the truth, there was also a natural want for gossip. It becomes more of an issue when that want can potentially create false news that ends up becoming unreliable and incredibly biased. It's also detrimental to criminal or legal cases, not to mention the people associated with or impacted by it. In the Parker and Hume case in the media, like today, people were swayed by social rules and norms. In 1954, traditional gender roles were seen as threatened by specific things such as the rise in juvenile delinquents, such as Juliet and Pauline, opinionated and mouthy teens. In the eyes of society, this equaled uncontrollable kids, which could only mean they were dangerous. The rise in the subculture of teens during this time made adults absolutely besides themselves that their kids would be disobeying their orders and going against the rules. Women especially were seen as evil temptresses if they refused to act like the silent, perfect dolls they were raised to be. The two mothers also in the center of this case were the victim, Honorah Parker, or Honorah Reaper, Pauline's mother, and Hilda Marion Hume, who was Juliet's, or as we know her now, to be Anne Perry's mother. The profile we see are complete opposites. Hilda was considered a sultry, sexy temptress. During this time in cinema, the femme fatale was the bad girl that all the men saw as sexy and wanted to be with them. But the femme fatale was also the essence of sexual evilness, the alluring woman who is almost like a black widow, wanting to lure men into some sort of sexual honey trap. Honorah was deemed the motherly one, although her description was just as insulting. She was the matronly one, the typical boring beige Becky, hard-working housewife. While Hilda was described as a curvy, sexy panther, Honorah might as well have been called a dumpy potato, which was far from the truth. Both women were often painted as attractive women, though Honorah was taller and broader, also described as buxom, full-figured. So think more Marilyn Monroe than a sack of spuds. Besides the media, the portrayal of Hilda and Honorah were also strikingly different in writings. Author of Anne Perry and The Crime of the Century, Peter Graham purposely grazes over the information about Honorah and Herbert's affair, but drags Hilda and her affair through the mud, even creating ridiculous scenarios that never happened. He doesn't offer proof, but instead adds a great detail to some theatrical holiday party, for example, at Elam or Ilam, the house and property that the Humes used to live in during this time in New Zealand. He takes the time to relentlessly verbally accost the two minor-aged children in this case, and Hilda. He dedicates page after page to tearing down Anne Perry as a writer and rips through her words, taking pains to remind us exactly what kind of writing she does. His arguments are as thin and unimaginative as his own writing. Graham frowns at lurid accounts that other authors or sources of this case may discuss, yet has no issue himself describing Honorah's horrible injuries and comparing her head wounds to the coagulating bloody placenta from after childbirth. His hypocrisy is considered gospel to some who've also discussed and researched this case, including Anna Liask, a New Zealand Herald journalist. She's actually the senior crime writer, and back in 2023, Liask interviewed Anne Perry's younger brother, Jonathan Hume. He's another winner who gives outlandish opinions and a false diagnosis of his own sister. Jonathan Hume is the younger sibling of Anne Perry, or as she was once known as Juliet Hume. Jonathan doesn't brag or discuss her accomplishments, but downplays her success. This is after years of being her research assistant, a rather cushy job portrayed in the documentary about Anne called Interiors. In this interview with Liask and the Herald, Jonathan Hume speaks to feeling the need to label his sister insane, as he did in this interview. He claimed he wanted the verdict after the trial, and 71 years later, to be changed from just guilty to guilty but insane. Jonathan said he felt comfortable only after Anne passed, assumably suggesting that his sister made him feel unsafe in some way. And it was only after she died he was able to freely express himself. In reality, it was probably because Anne would not have supported him claiming she was mentally ill, because she wasn't. There was zero reason for this. It doesn't impact anything, and it wouldn't clarify anything. How would changing a verdict help anyone learn more about the mental health or capacity of Anne Perry? Hume wanted to know how he could go about changing this. However, if his goal was really to help people understand his sister in some way, why would his first inkling to be reaching out to a journalist before trying to contact a lawyer? I did think maybe he didn't have the funds to get a legal team together and maybe he needed some help, but this doesn't seem like a good use of any lawyer's time, because in addition, Juliet and Pauline also had separate legal teams, although their defense attorneys submitted their pleas together. Pauline is still alive, which means if Jonathan was successful, would it impact her verdict? During his interview with Liask, he mentions that he barely knew Pauline. So is he willing to contact her now and discuss how this verdict could change or affect her old verdict? Not that that really matters now. And letting her know that Anne's may change, but not hers? People may wonder, why would Anne's brother want to say these things that weren't true? Jonathan Hume will have his own day or episode in this podcast. But for now, I need people to know what kind of brother he is to Anne. Although I do understand he may have some resentment and maybe insecurities, which are understandable and justified with the history. But in my opinion, I don't think he's forgiven his sister for what she did. And to be fair, those are his feelings that he has to go through. But I feel these lingering emotions of the actual crime itself is not the concern. Because why would you want your sibling to be continued to be dragged even once they're gone? Why would you continue to have people question her sanity? While speaking to some sources, though the exact words have never been said, it is strongly suggested that people close to Anne Perry do not agree nor appreciate her brother Jonathan's opinion of his sister. It's not only ridiculous, it's also unfounded. With narratives from people like Jonathan Hume and Peter Graham, it's no wonder people only see their gossipy version of events. These sensationalized versions get clicked and shared and found more frequently. It then gets used into updated reports or anthologies about the crime. It's swept up with other falsified accounts and spread, with many unaware at the level of inconsistencies. Hilda and Honorah were both English, both raised in well-to-do areas and families. Hilda married Henry, most likely for the status they both had, her in society and him in the science field. Honorah and Hilda both had extramarital affairs. Hilda had an affair with William Perry, while Honorah had one with Herbert Reaper. Hilda and William, or Bill, eventually got married. Honorah was never legally married to Herbert and understood that she would probably never be legally married to him. She also knew that Herbert had a wife and 2 small sons. He was still married to his first wife and not divorced when he began an affair with Honorah. She helped Herbert try and dodge the police when his legal wife, Louisa, reported him missing. Herbert claimed Louisa was abusive to him, with one scenario describing she would sleep with a knife under her pillow, threatening to use it on him. Herbert told this story to Honorah, and Honorah, believing him, then tried to help him escape his wife. Another interesting thing is he felt in danger enough to leave Louisa, but felt and said that he knew she was a perfectly safe and good mother. So leaving the kids wouldn't be a danger. Oh, okay, Herbert, because that sounds logical. So he was frightened enough for his own safety and needed to get away with his much younger mistress, but had no problem leaving his kids behind with a woman who sleeps with a knife under her pillow. One result at this time, after everyone learned about the people in this case, was the public opinion claimed the wrong mother got it, stating that because Hilda was an adulteress and not very well liked in the city, that she deserved to be bludgeoned to death and not Honorah or anyone else for that matter. This idea was never shut down, but shared with lots of people. Both these mothers were involved in questionable relationships, yet the picture is not equal. The media's portrayal of true crime stories plays a significant and often powerful role. It shapes public perception and understanding of crime and the justice system. With the rise of social media, independent, freelancing citizen journalists, or as Glamour magazine calls us, mommy sleuths, it's important to remember all levels of news contributors should follow and stick to facts. Sensationalism and bias can lead to obvious misinformation, harming victims and their families and the causes they represent. It can tear good people down and apart, ruining their lives for the sake of entertainment. I'm a strong believer in sharing opinions and personal views that can help highlight important topics and give depth or a different outlook, but clarifying that they are opinions and not necessarily agreed by everyone. It behooves us to remember our opinions do count, but take a back seat to the truth. We should be striving for fair, truthful, and accurate reporting. All media sources can attempt to ensure that, yes, true crime stories are engaging, respectful, informative, but above all, truthful. Transparency is necessary and only helps to give credibility. We are all consumers of the media, whether we just watch or listen to it or produce it ourselves. It is important for us to critically evaluate the content we consume and advocate for responsible journalism. When pieces of information are taken out but found to be missing, it gives a feeling of misdirection. Why omit or disregard important details if you're telling people you're speaking the truth? After all we've seen lately in the news about media manipulation and sources outright lying, I ask, isn't it time we get some actual truth? Thank you so much for listening.